Bonjour, everyone. Hi, this is Neshi Lokotz, and you're with us at Star Nations Radio Network on Star Nations Be Live TV. You know, our partners at Be Live helps us to be able to do these kind of interviews together and to be able to have not just really good fun, but a lot of good, interesting information too. So welcome to the show. I'm just going to hide my name for a minute here. And you are listening to and watching Star Nations Communications from Home. And I'm your host tonight. This show has started out, I want to say it was like in July. No, I'm sorry. It was May. It was May because we were just starting out using Be Live, and I was kind of like the guinea pig. I was the test. Learning how to use it. And you know what? It turned out to be something really fun, and to be able to interact with all of you that are watching has been, it's been made my Tuesday nights really. So I'm so glad that we're able to continue this. So welcome to the show. I'm coming to you from Tomo, Wisconsin, which is in the northwestern part of the state. I live about an hour from the Mississippi River, and we had quite a storm yesterday. We didn't get quite as much snow as some other people did, but we got maybe about 4 inches, which is really the most amount of snow we've had all winter. That's unheard of around here. So many people were out actually smiling as they were shoveling snow today. So I just wanted to say hello to Rochelle. She's in the house. Hello, Rochelle. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's always good to see your smiling face there on your profile. Speaking of smiling faces, one of the things that we all do, all of the show hosts do, is to make a request of you. And if you wouldn't mind doing something for us, we really would appreciate it. And that is to like and to share the show. And the reason why we ask you guys to do that is because it's that logarithms, it's kind of getting to be like almost like a swear word around here, but it's true. I mean, if we don't like, we don't share, and we don't comment on things, Facebook just doesn't put it on the feed nearly as often. And so when we do that, we are actually helping other people find our shows much easier. So I've got my phone and I have us up, and I am going to like the broadcast, the show, if it will pop up. Technology is grand, isn't it? It's taking its sweet time. We must be having some internet stuff going on tonight. All right. So I'm going to like and I'm going to share the show. And when I share, I literally, hi Jocelyn, thank you for sharing. I literally share it to one of our closed groups. It's where our community, Star Nations community, really hangs out the most, and that is at the radio network closed group. And so that's where I'm going to share this one at. It's just going to take a second here. There we go. All right. And my internet is a little slow tonight. I don't know what the deal is. We'll keep rolling though. How's that? And Rochelle, thank you for sharing too. And my phone is just kind of spinning. If one of you ladies, Jocelyn or Rochelle, if you wouldn't mind sharing it to the radio network closed group, I would really appreciate it. Okay. Thanks for doing that for me. That's something I usually do, and my phone just isn't cooperating. So tonight, I have been looking forward to this show tonight for a lot of reasons. I met my guest through a friend of mine who happens to help me on every other Tuesday morning. She's here because she helps me by cleaning my house. And I tell you what, Susie has made my life so much better because she's here every other Tuesday. And we got to talking one day. And one morning, and Susie was sharing with me about that she used to be she's a former Amish person, and she used to live in a community really very close to here. And she was sharing with me that she was going to be going to Minnesota to visit a friend of hers, and she was so excited about it. And so she was sharing about this friend of hers. And she goes, she kind of does what you do. And I said, what's that? She goes, she does live stream shows all the time. And I said, really? About what? And she said, about being a former Amish. And there's so many questions about people who leave the Amish community. But there's also a support there. And she answers questions. And I've watched a couple of her shows. And they really are very good. Now, here is my guest. Her name is Lizzie Hershberger, and she was born in Ohio. I'm going to try to pronounce this name, Mazalon. I don't know if that's right. We'll find out. In 1974, she says that she was given the name Lizzie Hershberger after her dad's mom. She says she was only a few months old when her parents moved with her grandparents to start a new Schwarzentruber community, it's hard to say, in Canton, Minnesota. And she spent a lot of years feeling different than her other 4 siblings. And she ended up leaving her Amish community around 16 years old. But she moved back about 5 months later and then left again. And get this, she left a year later with only a few personal things and like $5 in her pocket. So, we can only imagine what kind of hardships that she went through and the kind of soul searching that she had done. And today she says that she's thankful for her limited education and experiences growing up. She says the Amish life drove her to seek answers that found her a life filled with self-worth, self-acceptance, happiness, and fulfillment. Now, she's still living in Minnesota with her husband of 21 years, and they've got 4 kids. And one of their son, is a special needs son, a college student, and a senior in high school, and their youngest is in elementary school. She says her passion lies in sharing her story to show other women that they too can have a voice. Now, isn't that something that fits right into our community, right? She says she loves mentoring and coaching aspiring women entrepreneurs and individuals who seek growth that will contribute to the self-empowerment of themselves and the people within their circles. She says she has a home-based business and she's currently working on her memoirs. And I love the title that she's chosen. Her title is Life Behind Blue Doors. Her background in the Amish culture brings the love for outdoors, including natural vegetable gardening, hiking, and horseback riding. She says that one of her favorite things to do for self-care is listening to the rain or the ocean while reading a book. Now, doesn't she fit in really well with Star Nations? And with that, I'm going to bring Lizzie on with me. And we're going to do this. Hi, Lizzie. Wait a minute. I got to take your there you are. Hi, welcome to the show, Lizzie.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. That's good. Guess who's in the house? Who is in the chat room? But our friend Susie. Hi, Susie. Glad you could join us tonight.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I know. One of the things that I know for sure, sounds like Oprah, right? But whenever somebody introduces me and they read my bio, I always think, oh my God, did I really do all of that? Because, we don't usually hear our own bio read back to us. Not very often. And so it's always kind of like, oh my gosh. And so I just, when I'm reading your bio, because I read it over a couple of times before tonight, and I was thinking, man, Lizzie just really fits into Star Nation's community really well. You really do, just given your background. And as soon as I read vegetable gardening, natural vegetable gardening, there's a lot of people that kind of sat forward, because we have a lot of gardeners here in our group too. And we are international, where we have listeners, watchers of our shows from all over the world. And so this is our chance to I don't know, maybe even introduce a few people to a culture that they may know just a very little bit about, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Even some of my viewers are going to be, former Amish. They're getting to be introduced to your nationality, and I'm really excited. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Before we dive into the questions and let you share with us about how you left your community, I want to give a little background to our listeners and our audience. And that is that you and I have spent a couple of days just kind of chatting, not straight days, but, we working out the technological stuff with the internet and computers and getting to know each other. I think one of the things that really sticks in my mind is we come from two completely different cultures within the United States culture. It's a culture within a culture. And from the Native American culture and the Amish culture, and that there are some similarities that between our cultures that I didn't know about until I got a chance to talk to you, So I want to thank you for that. You're welcome. I don't know. Let's see. I want to start with our very first question. And we do have, I'm sure that there's some people in our audience who would like to know the answer to this, because we said that you were former Amish and that you had left your community when you were about 16 the first time and then 17 the second time. And so the question is when and why did you want to leave your community?
Thank you. And that is probably the most common question that I do get. And that is, why would you choose to leave this, this Amish community that a lot of people have an image of, which is, simple and easy and quiet and, just this kind of lifestyle that a lot of people maybe kind of wish they would have, especially nowadays with technology and things like that. Mm-hmm. So my reason for leaving is I just, number one, I never felt like I quite fit in. And that was probably just a multiple different reasons. But I did always wanted to do more than what the culture, that what they allowed us to do. And that was really, the community is really controlled by the bishop and the preachers. And then it comes down to your parents and your leaders. And I just wasn't able to express myself or, basically do what I wanted to do. And that was just to be more and be, especially as a woman, I wanted to express myself more than what I was able to. So that's really, I think, why I was led to leave. And maybe it was, when you think about it, being a teenager, maybe it was a lot of rebellion and, you just wanted to get out and not do what others tell you to do. Mm-hmm. But I really felt the pull to leave. And at that time, I wasn't sure why. But when I did leave the first time, I left and I lived with a friend of the family, basically a friend of our families that was non-Amish. I went to high school, actually a regular high school, for a couple months. And then I really missed my family, and I decided to go back. I thought maybe I made a mistake. Maybe this is really not for me. So I went back and lived with my parents and in the community. And I really tried to embrace it. I tried to do everything they wanted me to do. I became the school teacher in the schoolhouse I went to school in. I really just tried to embrace that all. And but I couldn't, I just couldn't, I just couldn't fit in. I just couldn't feel what I felt like, my grandma, she always seemed happy and comfortable in her own skin, in her own Amish dress. I didn't feel that. So then I left again the second time. And then I went and I lived with a family in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And they really helped me find my path. I started going to college to get my GED at first, and then I got a couple years of college. So that really has been the process, and then I ended up marrying my husband, who is from the same community I grew up in. So
your husband. So your husband. Get a little bit of an echo. So your husband is actually from your former Amish community. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in the same community. He lived a couple miles from my parents. I knew him not all my years of growing up, because his family moved in when he was about 14. So I got to know him, and he had left the Amish before I did. And then eventually, we got married, and we have 4 kids. So.
Well, we have a question for you. Jocelyn is asking, did you ever wish that you didn't leave?
That is a good question. No, I do not regret leaving at all. But I also don't regret growing up Amish. I feel I got so many neat things from growing up in that culture. I had a great grandmother that was just wonderful. She lived right next to us, and she really spent lots of time in teaching me, about the Amish, basically duties of what a woman or a wife would do, baking bread, the vegetable gardening. I learned all those things from her. And so I don't regret growing up there, but I'm glad that I'm not raising my kids that way. I don't have anything against them as far as if anybody wants to live that way, great. But it's just not for me. It's just the environment is too controlled for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that. That was one of the, when you and I were talking previously, is that's one of the things that, when you grow up in a more traditional Native American home, there is rules. There's it can be very strict about gender roles and what you can and cannot wear, and even sometimes to the point of what you can and cannot eat, depending on the time of year, and if you're a woman, and there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't realize that's a part of the culture, and that the other thing is the mystique around it, and the romanticizing, I'll say, of it, and so it's good that we talk about these things and share. I just want to I want to say hello to Karen Linder. Trussell is with us. Hi, Karen. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. And so, Lizzie, so when you left at 17 with that $5 in your pocket and you ended up in La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's nice that there's families out there that are aware of when Amish people leave their communities, no matter what the age, because I would imagine that if you're going to leave somewhere in your late teens to probably 20s. If you're going to leave, does anybody leave there when they're older, like in their 30s or 40s?
On occasion, they will, but then they tend to have had a family, and have children already that they'd be leaving with, but that is more rare than it is you leave, as you said, younger. And then just to clarify, in the Amish community that I grew up in, you are not able to have your own money. So say you even have a job, like I had a job as being a school teacher, I was not allowed to have my own money, and I had to give it to my parents until I was of age in their belief is 21. So that's why I didn't have more money. So, I think some communities are different, but that was my community.
And there is another thing that we have to clarify is, and a lot of people who are watching this have watched my shows for a long time, and so they know that what I've said this next thing a lot is that when you're talking about Native Americans, there are federal government recognized 567 different nations, and there's many, many more that the federal government doesn't recognize. And so there's just not one culture that is Native American. There's many, many layers to it, right? And that's one of the things that you shared with me that I didn't realize, is that there's more than just one Amish community. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. And you did a great job before saying the Swartzentruber Amish. So that is the community I come from. It's kind of interesting, but that's really what we're called. And there's so many different churches that will have a little bit slightly different rules. But what your viewers might want to know about the Swartzentruber Amish is that is considered the lowest, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's really what they call themselves. So we have the least privileges, and meaning, no phones in the house, no running water other than cold water, very limited abilities of getting, somebody to pick you up and take you to the grocery store, just different things like that, non-Amish. And then there's so many Amish that goes all the way up to, you might see them, and you might almost not be aware of that they are actually Amish, because there's such a variation. So Swartzentruber Amish is where I came from. The community I came from was very, very, very sheltered. I actually wasn't even aware that there's any other Amish until I was older. Because there was no other Amish around us. I just thought that Amish are Amish. So as I got older into my teens, and then I became aware, and I met other Amish. A very sheltered, very small community, our own schools, and therefore I wasn't exposed to any other Amish.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that, because I'm sure some of our audience wouldn't even know that. From our talk, one of the things that we mentioned, and I had asked you about, was is that when you're living in the community, there is probably one church, I'm assuming, right? And so when you leave the Amish community and you come out into the English, and there's so many different religions. What kind of spiritual support did you have when you left your community, or didn't you have spiritual support?
Well, I'm really thankful. The first family that I went to live with, they were Christians, and they did go to a church, but it was considered like a non-denominational. So I was really drawn to that, because I knew that I didn't want to become part of a church where I would end up, in my opinion, controlled by the church again. So eventually, as when my husband went to get married, we actually got married in a non-denominational church. And then we, for many, many years, went to a non-denominational church here in, it's actually in Iowa, but by southern Minnesota. So very, that's what we still do, is just,
Yeah.
making sure that it's non-denominational. It's just because of where we came from, and but very spiritual. I believe I'm a Christian. My kids have always been involved in church, youth group, Awana, things like that.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it is very limited when you first leave. It depends on, what you get exposed to.
Right.
For a church.
Yeah, talk about discerning, learning how to discern that for yourself. That's one of the things that we talk about on almost all of our shows here, is to use your own discernment and your own intuition when it comes to selecting your spiritual teachers and those kinds of things. And so I was just curious because in the Native American sense, there's a traditional religion, which is pretty. When we talk about traditional, it's very structured. And then my mom actually, she was more a Lutheran, and so I grew up with a mixture of a traditional sense, dream drum, and the Lutheran. And so when I ask that question is because that's basically my answer when people ask me, is that I tend to go to places where it's more spiritual in nature rather than religious because of the dogma, the politics behind all of it, and the control. And so I'd rather be someplace where it's okay to ask questions, because that's how I grew up, is you didn't ask a lot of questions. So, and we also, Jocelyn has a question for you. Jocelyn's asking, can you go back to visit your family and let them know your children?
That's a great question. We do go back and visit. We take our kids with us to visit. But I always tell people it's like a visit. We go back and we're maybe there at the most for one meal, but then we leave. We don't go and spend the night there. It's not like a maybe what you'd be more traditional, where people would go and spend, say, Christmas and people sleep over and, stay for, we would not be allowed to do that, but we can go back. The only kind of interesting part is that I didn't choose to teach my children the Amish language. So when we go back, they have to communicate in English, they say, with our kids. So that's a little bit limited. Just a little bit. I think it's not as comfortable for them because they have to communicate in English. They prefer to talk to me and my husband in Amish.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is yes, we do go back and visit, but it's very limited. And I will say every Amish family is typically maybe slightly different as far as their rules on coming home and visiting and things like that. It depends on your siblings. If you have siblings that are still living at home Amish, sometimes they don't want you to visiting them because you're kind of a bad influence. They're afraid that, you might influence them in leaving. So everyone is different, but at this time, we go visit my husband's, so my mother-in-law, about every, at least once or twice a year. So that gives you an idea of how much.
So there's really no overnight. You go and basically spend the day with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a good question, Jocelyn. Good question. Mm-hmm. Now, there's something that I'd like to share with our audience, Lizzie, and that is something that happened to you recently, last year. And it's you told me that it was life-changing for you. And so I was hoping that you would share what you feel that you can with us about that, and why was it life-changing for you?
So what happened on Labor Day, so it's exactly 6 months ago, I was driving an ATV on our farm, which I've done many times, and I flipped it, or it flipped on me, and it severely crushed my ankle and my foot. Yes, it wasn't, it didn't affect my, it didn't affect my brain per se, my head, because so many ATV accidents you hear do affect people's brains. But mine was just such a severe injury. I was rushed immediately to the La Crosse hospital, and I spent 39 days there, and I endured 16 full surgeries. I had to do an experimental procedure where they put like cadaver skin on my foot, and then they put skin graft over that. And during that time, it really tested, it tested everything about me, especially since I feel that I was given the opportunity to, I was given a second chance, because easily I could have lost my life, or I could have at the most lost my foot. Typically people don't get to keep their foot if it's injured as severely as mine. Very rarely do people get to keep that, keep the foot. They would have amputated, and I would have had a prosthesis, which isn't the worst. But to me as a 43-year-old, I know that I have so much left in life to give and to share. And with that happening, I had been doing some sharing about my story and things, and I'd always wanted to write my memoir and let people know where I came from and some of the things I endured. But while I was laying in the hospital, that's really when it was very heavily brought on to me that I really need to share my story and get it out there, and it's the time to do it. And so that's why, I mean, it really changed me, because I think, I know for me anyways, being a mom with children, you sometimes are so consumed with parenting and, wanting the best for them, or especially I want them to have more than what I had. And I was just always so busy. And I was really brought to the realization that busy is just, I was busy with what I think about now. Now I have way more time. I take time. I'm not able to get around the way I was before. I will eventually. I do have full range of motion in my foot, but I still will have about another year of therapy before I will be fully recovered. So I have so much to share, and just with that, I had to learn. I feel like I had to relearn some of the things that I learned from my grandma growing up, and that is self-care and home remedies and different things like that I went back to using. So that's what that was. It really has changed me for the better.
Yeah, but to spend much time in a hospital and that many surgeries, and I know that in our audience, we have many healers in our audience, and what they know about anesthetics when they put you under and what it does to your body, and how many months it takes to after each surgery to recover from that. So it's going to be another full year, before you feel like you're healthy again. You're probably feeling a lot better now than you did 6 months ago, I would think. Oh my gosh. Even just say 2 months ago, I feel so much better now. And I'm still dealing with a little bit of, and you healers can tell, like I call it brain fog, or I just can't remember things quite the way I did before. But that all will pass eventually. It just takes time. I was very heavily medicated, during that time for my pain, on narcotics that I wouldn't want anybody to use. But I had no choice at that time. Yeah. Well, Yes, you will. And let me tell you, there's probably going to be a few people who will reach out to you to do some suggestions for you, because at some point your body is going to want to purge all of that, all the toxins. Although it was good for you, the pain to have to deal with that, it was a necessity at the time. So, which leads me to my next question. It was something that you and I both really, really wanted to talk about. And it was, for our audience, it was a long lead in just to get to this one question. And this one question, one of the things that Lizzie shared with me in our chats was about gifts. And for my audience who watches us all the time, is that, the gifts that we're born with, that we come into this physical life with, and that sometimes we don't even realize until we're much older that, oh, that's why I like doing that, or that's how that's done. And then learning how to, lack of a better word, to master those gifts. And so Lizzie has this gift that she shared with me. And I have to say, Lizzie, I think you're a little nervous just to even bring it up to me, and was wondering, don't think I'm crazy kind of thing, right?
Yes.
All right. So, audience, what Lizzie's gift, one of her many gifts, is that she is a healer with her hands. And Lizzie, why don't you share with us, how did you even recognize that? And before you left the community, before you left the Amish community, were you able to use it? And then what happened after you left?
Okay. So I don't remember exactly what age I was when I figured out that I had this gift. But my grandmother used to do it. My grandmother was the Amish midwife, and what I witnessed her doing, probably the most would be is that I would see her with small children or babies who were fussy, and I would see her just holding them in her arms, and they would quiet down and be calm. And all of a sudden I realized, if I did that to a baby, I could just hold the baby. Sometimes if I could tell that it had a stomach ache, my stomach would slightly get queasy, and I could put my hand on their stomach, and they would calm down and they would quiet down. And immediately I got known to be, where I loved babies, so I would be drawn to them, or they would be drawn to me. And the reason that I'm really reluctant to speak about it is that it seems to be in the Amish cultural that a lot of people want to say that it's witchcraft. And actually somebody told me that after I left the Amish. They said, well, that's witchcraft. That is not healing. It's not from God. So I quit using my gift. And meaning quit using it on other people. Now I have 4 children, so I would continuously use it on them. But as far as if I seen a person, just say in the public, that had a obvious injury or was in discomfort, I wouldn't ask them if I could lay my hand on them and heal them. So for many years I didn't, but in the last couple of years I really began to use it again, and it's not something. Or the reason I know, I guess, that it's not a witchcraft or it's something bad is because I don't do any kind of ritual. I don't say special words. I don't have to concentrate. I can actually, for an example, say my husband has a toothache during the night. He will basically he can reach over, put my hand on his cheek where the tooth is, and I'll fall asleep. I mean, he might not even barely wake up, but he gets relief from my hand being on there. so that I know that's not it's not witchcraft. It's not something bad. And I'm not, I'm not saying there isn't some sort of, there's some other rituals some Amish do. I did see my grandma use some other rituals where she would do things with strings and things like that, or a fingernail clipper. Now, I personally just never did that. I didn't ever really ask her about it, and she didn't use it very much. But whether that is healing or what it is, I don't know that. But it is just a gift that, as I told you, I haven't used it enough recently. I tend to be concerned about what people will say if I share my gift. But a couple of years ago, I was at a convention, and I was approached by another healer that asked me why I'm not using my gifts more, because they could pick up on it that I was a healer. So typically, healers can pick up that from other people. So I'm really wanting to do that more, and I really wanted to talk about it and to let people know that what I grew up with and what I do, I definitely is not witchcraft at all. I don't believe that at all. I believe it's a gift from God, and wherever you believe yours comes from, I believe mine comes from God, and I did learn it from my grandma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have to, when we talked about it, I agreed with you that it was a gift, and it's a gift that you came in with, and it's no coincidence at all that you and I would get introduced, and that you would be able to be here with the Star Nations community that is, so accepting, so open to these kinds of gifts. Because I tell you what, just about everybody who's in Star Nations community has some sort of gift, whether it's healing or, to be able to utilize their other senses, whether it's clairvoyance or clairaudient, or, and we talk about it openly. Now that doesn't mean that some of us didn't start out exactly that way, about hiding it or not wanting to talk about it, because we may not have come from a very supportive environment for that. And so, there's many of us who had to learn how to do that, to be able to utilize that gift and to see it as a gift. There's one thing that we talk a lot about, because there's a lot of empaths here, and to be empathic, and that is a gift. And when you talk about holding the baby, and you could tell about, having a queasy stomach because you had the queasy, that's an empath. That's an empath.
See, and
that's an empath. And so, and it's a good thing. Those of us who are empathic, sometimes we didn't see it as a gift at first, because we didn't understand it. We didn't understand why we were feeling certain emotions, because a minute ago I was just happy, and now I'm feeling sad or feeling angry, or, it's like, what is that about? Well, that's because we're picking up someone else's feelings. So I think that having you as a guest here on the show and introducing you to Star Nations community, I think that I'm hoping that you're going to be welcomed with huge open arms and say, come over for a visit, kind of thing. A cyber visit. Oh my gosh. Oh, and here we go. I didn't even read this. I should have read this before. Sorry, Jocelyn. Jocelyn says, you can be yourself with Star Nation. That's right. Absolutely. And she also asks, she says, I would believe the gift was passed down from your grandma. Possible. Mm-hmm. Possibility. Mm-hmm. Because, and from go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that the Amish community, they definitely kind of believe that.
Mm-hmm.
They believe it. Your gift is passed down. Something I don't believe they don't believe it was learned. It's not a learned activity. It's something that is passed down. So I believe that. I think it is a gift, and it is something that's very unique. And I think that some people just aren't really aware of their gift. And I find it very interesting, like you said about the, all of a sudden you're overwhelmed by somebody else's emotions, and that is, because you're happy one minute and then you pick up on somebody else's. That is something that I have been trying to deal with, and that is a difficult part of being a healer, is that you pick up on somebody else's things, and you have to just kind of I have to learn to shake it off and not take it on.
Right, exactly. Now, coming up, I can't give you the dates yet because we haven't set the dates for a couple of things. But next week on Star Nation's Communications from Home, I'm interviewing a good friend of mine. Her name is Deborah Morell, and she comes from a background of shamanism, but she wants to talk about, and perfect topic, tools for empaths, so that they can actually, see it as a gift and function in their own environment, their own world, and not take on other people's emotions, feelings. And so we're going to talk about that next week. But coming up, we're going to be doing a couple of online Facebook Be Live classes. And one of them is, we need to set a date for it. I had asked the hosts from Star to Stone to do a class for just empaths and the use of stones and crystals, and how those can help us enhance our empathic gift, but also to protect us when we're using our gift. And so, but we need to set a date for that. We haven't done that yet. So that might be something you might be interested in. So we have one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and I hope we have enough time for it. From my culture, I know that there are beliefs about my culture from the mainstream, okay, that are not correct. They're stereotypes. They're myths. They're the romanticized version of us. And from a Native American standpoint, one of the things that we noticed, and it's actually called something, is called, that you're a noble savage, or you are a heathen, right? And that's kind of like the romanticized version of us, So I'm guessing that there is something also from the Amish point of view that are stereotypes, myths. Don't want to call them urban legends, but maybe it's more country legends. I don't know. But is there something that you've always said, if I have a chance to talk about that, I want to dispel that one? If you had one, what would it be?
I would say, the main one is, and it's probably just because I'm a woman, is that I think that people tend to think that the Amish man works the hardest, and he has all these different things that he does. But I believe that's a myth. I think the Amish women work the hardest. They tend to do all the cooking, the cleaning, the raising the kids, just gardening. All those things are really an unspoken rule that the women are supposed to expect it to do. The husband or the men are out bringing in the money or to support, to support the family. But when I was growing up anyways, my dad did nothing, like he never washed dishes or did laundry or mow the yard or work in the garden. He did none of those things. That was expected for my mom and me and my sister to do. Now, I'm not saying that that's for every Amish family, but I believe that is in general, that is the unspoken rule, is that, and I think that is just, it's not, people don't get that view of the Amish. I think they might see the Amish woman outside hanging up laundry or something like that, but they don't really see that they're the ones that are really, raising the kids. And and when I say raising the kids, most of them have large families where the women tend to be pregnant a lot, and so then they're often maybe pregnant, and they have other small children they're raising. They tend to do all that without complaining or maybe out in public, you're not going to see that it's a burden, but really it is a lot of work and a lot of time doing all these things when the husband will go out, often either just works on the farm or he works out in the community somewhere, whatever it is, he'll leave in the morning and he comes back. Mm-hmm. So I think that is one thing that I definitely, and that's one thing that I did not want to do that. And I was not wanting to be an Amish wife that just stays home and raises the kids. And some women, that's fine if they're content with that, but that was not for me.
Yeah. Well, we also have to make sure that when we say that the women were doing all the work, is that there are no vacuum cleaners. They're the hot water has to be boiled and added, and all of this work that stay-at-home moms do is done without technology, mechanics, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And in a native situation, we may, depending on where you live, you may have family to help you. You may have an aunt, or you may have cousins or something like that. The family structure can be kind of different around that. Westerners call it extended family. We just call it family. There's not an extended to it, and usually that we're taking care of the grandparents too. Or it's just not the kids, but it's also the elders that we're taking care of too. And so, so it's very similar to that, except that we have modern conveniences such as vacuum cleaners and lawnmowers with, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. And we would, that's so right. Often there is the elders, they would also take care of the elders if they're older. And yes, it is correct, like you said, about doing the work. Now, the men do work, but it's just a different kind of work. It's the work that brings in the money. It is not acceptable for a wife or a mother to be working outside of the home. It's considered they stay at home and take care of that mm-hmm. sort of thing. So eventually, just for an example, my grandparents got elderly, and then my aunt mm-hmm. took care of them. They would never get put into a home, right. like a nursing home, or even a special needs. I had a special needs aunt. She would never go to a nursing home. You always take care of your family members. And yes, there will be sometimes you have, like you said, extended family maybe to come in, and help you with things, but that's for maybe a couple weeks if you have a brand new baby or certain circumstances. But typically, you're expected to do to do your work.
Yeah.
If you can't, you know, that's what you do.
Yeah. You know, so that I wanted to ask you that question because for me, when I talk about Native Americans, because I can't speak for all Native Americans, just like you can't speak for all Amish, right? But there are some stereotypes out there that if we have a chance to do a little education, a little helping to understand, and really we're as Dr. Maya Angelou would say, is that we're more alike than we are unalike. And there's so many more similarities that if we talk about the similarities, the differences really aren't as big, you know, because there's so much more on the other side. There is one thing, I'm just looking at the time, but I have to ask this question, and I'm sorry it wasn't one that we've talked about. One of the things that I have to preface this a little bit. From a very, very young age, I was maybe 5 years old. I was my family, we did performances. We Native American dance. Okay. And we did that as a paid job. And so my dad would actually go out and get these jobs for us, right? And so we would and perform in front of people. And so I remember as a very young child, tourists coming up to take pictures. And it was always, you know, the cute little Indian girl or, and posing for the pictures. Now I know because I live near an Amish community, right? I know that taking pictures of Amish people I would never go out to purposely do that because I know what it's like to be on the other side of that camera, having your picture taken, one, without your permission, and two, it's well, you know. Can you address that a little bit for us and helping us understand why it's not a good idea to go out and take pictures, especially of Amish children?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it, you know, being, like you said, like, you know, you'd be in the schoolyard and tourists would drive by and take photos. We were always told to turn away, to not let them take your photo. And the best that I know that I was explained that it's from the commandment, graven images, that they consider somebody taking your photo to be a graven image, and that you did not, you don't want that, or it had something to do with being proud, like even you didn't want your babies to look in the mirror because they could see their image, and so yeah, I don't personally go out and try to take, even now, you know, I'm not Amish anymore, I don't go out and try to take pictures of Amish kids or Amish people, without their permission. There are some Amish communities now that are in more of a tourist area, and they will accept you taking their photo. And I mean, accept, they just say, take the photo, and you'll see there are lots of photos out on the internet, but typically not from the Swartz and Trooper Amish. We still are frowned about on that. The unfortunate thing is that, I have no baby pictures. I don't know what I looked like, when I was, a baby, because there are no pictures. Right. My parents, I have no pictures of them. I shouldn't say no pictures of them. I have a picture behind me that is a picture of my dad that my daughter took for 4-H, and he didn't know that it was being done, but see, he's not facing the camera, he's on the side. So yeah, it is one of those things that I just recommend people just not go out. I mean, you don't want, I don't want my child, if it's even out in public and some random stranger just starts snapping pictures of my, daughter or son. I don't think that's polite. I don't think it's appropriate. So right, exactly. Yeah.
It's something that's another thing that we have in common that a lot of people wouldn't even think about. Now, my dad did do it for to hire us out, literally, and it laughingly, I told him one time after I was an adult and all this is years and years ago. I told him, I said, yeah, you're kind of like Michael Jackson's dad, Joe, getting us these gigs, you know. And I remember going into, dancing at different schools and changing into, I'd go in with street clothes on, tennis shoes and T-shirt, jeans, and go into the bathroom, the girls' bathroom, change into my dance outfit, and come out, and I look more, of course, I look more Native American then, because I don't have my glasses on. My hair was long then. And so, I would go out, do the performance, go back I can change in a bathroom without having any of my clothes touch a grimy floor, and change back into street clothes, so there is an upside to it, and that is that from a very young age, I didn't mind standing up in front of a large group of people. You just kind of get past that, and so it kind of helps me today to do these kinds of things and not have to worry about that other stuff. But Lizzie, we are at the top of the hour, and I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and to be able to be on with me tonight and to share with us about what it was like for you to leave the Amish community, dispel some stereotypes for us. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. We got introduced, and I'm sure I will stay in contact with you and your community.
Well, we have one more thing that we want to share with everybody, and that is Lizzie has her own live stream show, and it's on Sunday, usually Sunday nights, right? Is it every Sunday? Every Sunday night?
I try to.
Okay. So next Sunday night, she's invited me to be on her show. And so we'll do this again, but she'll be asking the questions and interviewing me. And so join us, and maybe we'll continue the discussion, or maybe we'll start a whole brand new one. I don't know. But with that, thank you, Lizzie, and I'll see you next Sunday for that interview. And everybody, next week is March 13th, next Tuesday, right back here again, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. My guest is going to be Deborah Morel, and we're going to be looking at tools for the empaths from a shamanic point of view. So join me then, okay? With that, have a nice rest of the week, and we'll see you again next week. Bama Mina. Good night, everybody.